All right, day 3 of summer school 2017 is done. In the books. It was a good day. Had a test today, and I was a little curious to see how that was going to go because they did not start off strong. They started off showing why they were in summer school. Not very high math aptitude for some, poor work ethic for most, and not so great. But I really tried to push the idea that they were going to learn from making mistakes and evaluating their mistakes. And yesterday, for example, we started off class talking about the role of perseverance and what perseverance meant and how that if I could give them one thing to make them, happy, successful, well-adjusted people, it might be perseverance. It would certainly be on the short list of amazing things to have. So I think that was a good thing for them to think about, and I had them write on the front of their notes the word perseverance and the official definition, and then what it meant to them, and we talked about it a little bit. Then today, we talked about the nature of how it is you learn things that you know how to do, and how you make a sequential series of mistakes, and each one is more difficult than the other. I used the idea of learning how to play an instrument. First time you pick up an instrument, everybody makes the same mistakes, and you don't get better until you learn from that mistake. If you keep making that same mistake every time you pick up the instrument, you're never going to be any good. And, like a virtuoso, they will still make mistakes. But the mistakes that they're making and learning from aren't even approachable by a beginner. A beginner picks up an instrument and they can't even make that mistake that a virtuoso is going to make. So you don't get to skip ahead. Making those mistakes, learning and applying and so on, that's part of it. So that was very well received today. And there's one kid, a freshman boy, he's in special ed and he needs some pretty heavy modifications for math. But he was working his way through doing simplifying square roots, and he was messing up and asked me a question and try again and closer, and he finally got one right. He got the square root of 27 being 3 times the square root of 3, and the kid had like a huge old fist bump, and yeah, it was pretty sweet. And so that was pretty good. And then another thing that cracked me up in school today, teaching square roots to this girl, and I got on the board what she did, and I'll tell you the conversation. So this is what it was. It was a square root of 32, and I taught them that to simplify a square root, you factor and you look for the biggest perfect square. So 16. So she did all this. This is exactly what she had written on her paper. So square root of 16 is 4. Square root of 2 is irrational. It's just the square root of 2. And she's like, oh, well, 4 is 2. And I tried explaining to her that wasn't correct, that 4 is 4. This is 4. And that the square root of 4 is different. So I tried explaining to her that the square root of 4 and 4 were different numbers. And she looks at me and she says, like totally serious, Mr. Brown, I think your concussion's causing you some problems right now. Anyway, I eventually was able to make her get it when I talked about the square root of 5 not being 5. We can count 5, and the number times itself that equals 5. Can't count that. It finally sunk in. And one more funny story that happened this week, and then I'll tell you how their test went. On the first day of school, I explained to the students that there's a class pet. It's a snake. And students were kind of freaked out by it, and I explained that a snake can't hurt them. This one's, it's non-venomous. It's very small. They could step on it and probably kill it. And its only defense is to scare them. I told them that it doesn't even have hands, much less thumbs, so it can't even text. It's a totally worthless animal. And, it was a good joke. They all laughed. But the next day, a girl came up to me and she said, Mr. Brown, lizards have hands and they have thumbs. They can't text either. She was totally serious. Anyway, it was pretty precious. Cracked me up to no end. So, the test. Today was the test. Now, summer school is all about the high spots. We don't go in depth. Don't have time. I mean, we're going to do an entire semester's worth of material in 10 days. So we're hitting the big things. But even though hitting the big things, and a lot of these kids couldn't do any of these things 2 days ago, class average was 83%. I was thrilled with an 83% class average on a test. And did one thing that worked out really well. For half an hour leading up to the test, I let the students copy down anything they wanted on one piece of paper. And, that's taking notes. And that's studying. So they could not use their notes or other materials for the test, but they could condense anything they wanted to and write it on a separate piece of paper. And they were super focused for the entire half hour and made them think about what they had to learn. I mean, summer school is so compressed, they don't have time to really integrate things. So this was a good activity, and I was really happy that I tried it. Last thing, even though I've taught Algebra 1, I think I've taught Algebra 1 every single year that I've been teaching. So 11 years plus a ton of summer school, plus however many times I've taught that same material at community college level. It's a lot. I'm pretty well experienced in teaching Algebra 1. And I learned something today. I learned something about teaching Algebra 1 because I'm trying something new with summer school. I'm trying a new sequence of materials and trying them in a different way. And I learned one of the things that one of the disconnects with algebraic fractions. So that was really exciting. Students weren't translating greatest common factors and lowest common multiples from just integers into algebraic expressions. They couldn't make that leap. And so as I was able to break that apart and express it for them in a way that made sense. So that was really cool. Anyway, one other thing happened today. Got my picture took in the paper. That was pretty cool. First page, above the fold. Got all kinds of stuff happened from that today. I walked into the gas station to buy the paper, and the gas attendant, the manager there, he said, "Hey, front page today, huh?" The only problem is, for years and years and years, I've known this man, this Carlos, super nice guy, and he thinks my name is Jim. It says what my name is in here. He doesn't think my name's Jim anymore. Really silly, but that cracked me up to no end that he thought my name was Jim. And so my little one-person joke is now dead. Anyway, I'm hoping that having my name in the paper will really help give me some exposure. And it certainly has encouraged me to take on this project as a mission. And I'm really excited about it. So anyway, it's Friday. Summer school's over till Monday. And thanks for watching.